But when you reach that breaking point, what's the decision that you took? Like, what were you feeling, and then what's the decision that you made? Like, did
It's
you decide, okay, I'm gonna keep going, or you're like, I'm gonna take a breather? What did you make a decision on?
it's actually a combination of both. I would say, like, like I reached like burnout points multiple times in my career, and I would always like like either just like maybe like even like I would go like upstate to the mountains or something and relax for a bit, or like like take a vacation, take a few days to disconnect. And something like I've also like my parents raised me to always like if you face challenges, you have to face them.
The Nobody's Famous podcast. All right, guys, and we are back on the Nobody's Famous podcast. We have a very, very interesting and unique show today. And today, my guest is Abdelazim Eltoukhy. What a pleasure to have you, buddy. How's it going?
Pleasure is mine. It's going well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much. So I just want to start off by saying very quickly that this is the first time we're probably going to talk about finance, trading, platforms, all this type of stuff. And I want to say it's exciting for me personally.
Hmm.
I'm very excited to learn from you, and I'm sure all the
Hmm.
audience is as well. I'm going to start off with a quick intro of you. So I
Hmm.
asked you to send me your bio, and I wanted to read it back to you. I want to read it back
Yeah.
to you and see what how does it sound when somebody else is reading it. So
Hopefully
Abdullah,
not too cocky or
no,
narcissistic.
no, no. I think it's you'll notice that it's very humble as I as I read it. Um, so Abdelazim is native of Cairo. Early in 2020, he co-founded the Ticr app, which allows users in the UAE to invest in US stocks with no minimums. His experience spans analytics, marketing, and process engineering. He has a bachelor's in business economics and a master's in business analytics. Damn, that's a lot of words to say. And during his free time, he enjoys painting, reading, meeting new people, and following the latest in public and economic policies. There's a lot to unpack there,
Okay.
definitely, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of things that that I want to discuss. Um,
Hmm.
but before I jump into everything there, I want to
Hmm.
ask you this simple question: what's the lasting thing you think people will take away from this show? Speaking to you.
Uh, Last thing I would say is just like a lot of random things about me. I think like
Mm,
my experience so far has been like like very non-restrictive and very diverse. I'm a person, for example, who enjoys art and history, public policy and economics, and like like I'm also like I geek on like analytics and like like enjoy like finance and like like processing like process like improvements and so on. So it's definitely like like I depends how deep we go into things, but it's just going to be like like a lot of different angles about me.
okay, awesome. It sounds like
Hmm.
that's gonna be a very wide spectrum,
Hmm.
which obviously is great because I think the finance side, the trading side, is very heavy also on the mind. So and the
Hmm.
technical side, but I do want to touch on that. And before
Okay.
I get into all of the financial side,
Hmm.
Abdelazim, I really want to start off a bit about you, like in your own words, just talking about how you've got to where you are right now, and then we'll
Hmm.
we'll take it from there.
Okay. So as I said, I'm a Cairo native. Um, um, uh, like my family's from Cairo. I lived there. Then in 2013, I moved to the US for college. I studied initially business economics for my undergrad. Then I did my master's in business analytics. Personally speaking, like going off that, like if you asked me 10 years ago what you'd like to do, I would probably said architecture or something. But I chose like a completely more like numerical and business route. Um, so I all like like it all started in Cairo. Then I think like like studying in the US was a big shock. Was like like it was a big step. Like it was like a big like it was like stepping outside my comfort zone. Initially, being away from my family, being away from anyone I know. Like initially, I remember I was on campus. I barely had any friends, didn't know anyone. Then you start meeting people, and you start meeting people from like every side of the world. Then it broadens your spectrum. Then that was like, I think, like a big shock in my life. That was like in 2013, 2014. Then the second shock when I started working in New York in 2017. It was a big like step up. New York was a brutal place. It's like everyone is very competitive. Everyone is the best in their field. So if like, like say in Cairo, I was like, like relatively good in school. In New York, everyone was good. So sometimes it gets scary, it gets overwhelming. Then also was like the transition. Right now, I'm like, yeah, I'm still in the US. I'm outside the school environment, I'm outside the university environment, but I have to prove myself in the work environment. Like that, my life all of a sudden wasn't outlined for me. And like personally speaking, my relationship with New York was like a very love-hate relationship. Like it's similar to Cairo in a way. But like, yeah, like some days I actually like completely loved it. I'm like, oh, New York is the best city ever. And other days I was like, I hated it. And I was like, I can't wait till the day I leave. But it was like, like looking back at it, it's like, it was like very, very rewarding. I met a lot of great people. I grew professionally, personally, and I wouldn't be like where I am today if it wasn't actually for my professional experience in New York and all the all the challenges I had to go through.
I think like the your journey definitely it resonates with a lot of people. I mean, in the way that people experience that new like the inflection point in their lives. I mean,
Mm-hmm,
I had the same. I mean, when I was in Spain, like when I went to
mm-hmm,
Beirut and I studied, it's not the same
mm-hmm,
type of feeling because I mean, I'm Lebanese, so going to study in my
yeah.
country is very, you do meet people from different spectrums for sure, but
Mm-hmm,
I think to touch on the point that you said about meeting very different types of people, that already
mm-hmm,
really kind of struck me even more when I studied in Spain. And I think
mm-hmm,
that's where you start to learn. I mean, I was in class with people who've bought and sold companies already, and for me that was
mm-hmm,
something that um, I could not imagine someone in the same age or generation as me doing that. I was still not in that
mm-hmm.
kind of mindset that at such a young age you could do that. I mean, I was not
Right.
brought up in a very like I was not brought up in an accelerator, as they say. I mean, for me things I was taking them as they go, and it was very different for me, the experience that I
Mm-hmm,
had. So I think like your journey really you kind of had that accelerator type feeling, especially when you got to New York. You were thrown into this,
mm-hmm.
this is a reality check kind of thing.
Right.
And a bit about, because you mentioned both of those cities, that's where I wanted to touch on the photos that you sent me, which I really
Mm-hmm,
love that you did. I've asked people to send me. Sometimes I ask them to send me things. It's either a photo of them or maybe something that they like. Um, till now, you've been one of the few people who've sent me a picture like that of Cairo side by side with New York.
mm-hmm,
Tell me just, I want you to visualize how both these cities kind of shaped or developed you as a person.
mm-hmm. So Cairo is like, like the first city I remember, like from like my childhood or anything. Like, so like I think my memory like started developing there. And both cities are brutal. Let's say it that way. Both are hectic. Both are like, like more than like 15 million people live in both cities. The difference is like New York is more hectic, more challenging. Cairo is like more on the chill side, like from a lifestyle and culture. This is
Okay,
what I
because I
mean.
was what I
It's
was like.
actually it's a very yeah, because I saw your face. I was like, no, it's a very hectic city. Like you get stuck in traffic. It's like cars honking all day.
Yeah,
It's like it's a lot of people. Like I have a lot of friends like from exactly like Lebanon or Jordan or like even the US. Be like, man, Cairo is like a different animal. It's it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
people like like cross the streets everywhere. Like like there's no traffic laws, honks. It's a completely like in a way like beautiful and hectic in its own way. In Cairo, I really appreciated the architecture. Um, Unfortunately, it's a lot of buildings have been like like destroyed in the last 10 years. But going around until now, I think if you go around in in downtown Cairo, you can see a lot of beautiful buildings and beautiful architectural styles, from like classical European to Islamic to Art Deco, and it was like very, very like mind blowing. And Cairo, in my opinion, is like one of the richest cities in terms of architecture.
Yeah.
Then New York is like similar in its own way. It's like noisy, it's crowded, it's more compressed, I would say. And the love-hate relationship in both cities, it's like, I remember like, when I was like in the school bus, like, 10 years ago, I would be like, man, I can't wait to leave this place. And it's like sometimes, like even when I went to the US, I could finally actually see how many hours of my day were wasted in a commute. And this is something I really like could notice in the first like few months. New York is it's a very rewarding place. You meet people from everywhere. I have like friends now like from New York and even like from Miami beforehand. I have like friends in Venezuela. I have friends in Colombia and like Saudi, everywhere. So that was like definitely like a very good experience, meeting everyone from like every corner of the globe. Then professionally, it was just, New York is even like a different animal when compared to the US. It's more competitive. So being my Cairo, my Egyptian self, it was like something I'm not used to. But both cities, they might seem different, but they're actually very similar in my experience.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to say that, especially obviously living there versus either traveling there or not really experiencing what it is. For me, like I can't relate to Cairo because I've personally haven't been. I've been to New York, but it's only ever been either like a quick exchange program, or I've traveled like for vacation, which I mean I absolutely love exploring the city. I'm very much an urban person, but I think that doesn't come close to actually understanding how people live there, and especially not the work environment. And I think that can break a few people. It can break a few people in terms
Definitely.
of the
And
the
it
the
broke me personally
yeah.
for a bit. Yeah, it was like a breaking point. I reached
I
like the breaking
understand.
point multiple times, but you have to come back and like stand on your legs. It's like how you handle the situation, and it's like I think I've grown that way, from like consistent like challenging challenges, and like consistent like breaking points.
But when you reach that breaking point, what's the decision that you took? Like, what were you feeling, and then what's the decision that you made? Like, did
It's
you decide, okay, I'm gonna keep going, or you're like, I'm gonna take a breather? What did you make a decision on?
it's actually a combination of both. I would say like like I reached like burnout points multiple times in my career, and I would always like like either just like maybe like even like I would go like upstate to the mountains or something and relax for a bit, or like like take a vacation, take a few days to disconnect. And something like I've also like my parents raised me to always like if you face challenges, you have to face them. So
Oh,
this is something, yeah, I personally, and this is like something that has grown in me like over the years, is like if I'm like faced with an obstacle, it's better to face it and get over it. And so far that's what I've been doing. If whenever I faced any obstacle in life, I was like, okay, maybe I want to quit, maybe I want to give up, but first I need to get over this. This is how I personally look at things.
I think it's very interesting because maybe advice parents might give, it might be, I wouldn't say misinterpreted, but be interpreted in your let's say, you might think that it means something, but it's like, you could be, there's a challenge, and I
Hmm.
wouldn't say like, or there's an obstacle, you don't need to face that challenge now, or it's not worthy of your time. But I think
Hmm.
what you said about how your parents said that you should, if there's a
Hmm.
challenge, you should face it. I think this is such a great kind of it's great, and it's also difficult to do. I don't want to say it's
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 very
it's
difficult.
definitely
Yeah.
a positive thing only.
Hmm.
It's definitely has a lot of tough negative side to it, is that you you
Hmm.
have to
You pressure yourself.
suck it up. Yeah, you suck it up, and you pressure
Yes.
yourself,
Hmm.
and and I think this is also, I think it's coupled now. This is where I want to get into the finance part of it, because I
Hmm.
think this is coupled with your analytical brain. And this is what
Mm-hmm.
I wanna kind of ask you about. So because to be in finance
Mm-hmm.
is to understand there is this type of challenge. With numbers don't lie. You make a trading mistake, you make a miscalculation, that could cost you your job. There's
Of course.
some are other industries. I'm not talking about construction, and I'm not talking about like
Mm-hmm.
health industry. I'm talking about some other industries. If you make a mistake here and there, maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
not as devastating. But I think with trading,
Mm-hmm.
finance, there's a certain level of challenge that you must meet, and you must be very diligent. So getting into that, I want to understand what goes through your mind. So before I get into your businesses, what goes through your mind when you're looking at data, like when you're analyzing data? Does it overwhelm you at first, or do you know, like, you go and you're like, this is normal, I know what to do now?
It's a great question. Personally, I would say I would try to. I like to deeply analyze data, whether it's financial, whether it's like like just normal like economic data, for example. In for finance, for example, if I'm like trading, I would look into maybe like depends like like on my goals. If my goal is like short term, I would look into like volume, for example. So if you look at the trading
Mm,
volume of a specific day, you could see uh, where the stock is headed. And at the same time, you could also like see use like like buying data, or like like even like like candlestick charts to do that. From a long-term perspective, if you look like like at earnings, you look at like like revenue growth, and you check like the earning reports. That's more
fundamentals, I
analytical, let's
guess.
say. Yeah, that's more analytical, and like like you see like like where the market is headed, and news about like like the specific equity or stock, and you make like like your decision based on that. But yeah, on other stuff, I would say if you do like something every day, whether it's like like um, um, marketing analytics or financial data modeling, or like like even like economic like modeling. I've done that in undergrad. It's overwhelming at the beginning, and it's very challenging, and like sometimes you're um, like how can I do that? Because I remember like when I first started like like with data analytics, and like like dealing with large data sets, uh, I would say like when that's like back in school, I would like sit down and do an homework and be like, man, I can't figure this out.
Mhm.
I feel overwhelmed. I feel challenged. Is this the right even like measure for me? Am I up to this? But after a while, and like like you feel like like you learn, and there is I think it's a graph. Like sometimes you're like under the graph, then at a certain point you meet it, and then you exceed it. That's like my experience so far with analytics and with like things in general. Um, so yeah, like I think it's overwhelming at the beginning. Then with time you get used to it, and like like you eventually figure it out.
I think that's very it's very interesting the way that you say it. I mean, I wanna say, like, personally, I do trade, for example, a bit of crypto here and there. I do understand
Mm-hmm,
the words. I do understand all the technicals. But I think what's
mm-hmm,
interesting that you mentioned there is I just sparked into me now, thinking about it, is
mm-hmm,
that in school you get thrown a lot of huge, or university, you get thrown a lot of huge projects, big research,
mm-hmm,
all that type of stuff. It doesn't
mm-hmm,
compare obviously to the work environment, but a lot of that prepares you um, for kind of the work environment. But I think what's important to remember is, maybe somebody like might be watching this, might be thinking, if finance also isn't right for me. And I think from some of my friends and personal experience, I
mm-hmm,
see them, maybe they were not the best, they didn't get the best grades in school,
mm-hmm,
but because exactly what you said is, they kept at it, they kept working on
mm-hmm,
the analytics, they kept working on certain things. You just naturally become better, and then when you reach when you're at work, you might learn from a mentor or something, you get
of
better.
course.
And that's kind of
Mm-hmm,
my personal experience with, because finance also doesn't get into my head, like, it's not.
mm-hmm,
I mean, when I say finance, I meant like trading and stop
mm-hmm.
loss and limit orders, all
Like
that
limit
kind of stuff.
orders, yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm,
options, derivatives, all that stuff. It doesn't get into my
mm-hmm,
head, but I realized from some of my limited experience trading over the past few years, because I was looking at it all the time and practicing, and just understanding that I'm not gonna get this in 1 week. It's gonna take me some
Of
time.
course.
Yeah, that definitely. I think that's a very great way that you explained it. So I want to get a bit into your entrepreneur stuff. But before that, what does it mean? What does it take to be a Six Sigma certified green belt? What's the
So
what's
it's
the
did I mention that in my bio?
I mean this I found out through some other ways, you know. So I found out that
Oh,
you're a
okay.
Six Sigma certified green belt. But what is that like? What is that? At first I thought that meant you're certified in networking, which is the 6 degrees of separation theory, and I was like, no,
I
that's not
actually don't
it.
even know. I don't even know what that is. So
Well, that is, it's basically like it's a theory that, you know, we in the world we live only six contacts away from somebody, you know, of somebody that might be a celebrity, or you always live six contacts away. So
interesting.
I might know you, you might know somebody, you know, that is
Actually,
I don't
that's
know.
true. Yeah,
It
I
might
think you're
be
true.
Elon Musk or something. You know what I mean? Like
I
it's
wish, man.
yeah. So it's basically that's the theory, is that we live at least six degrees of separation between people. But I was like, is that it? Is he a networking professional? And then I was like, no, that's something even more than
No,
that. You're a
it's
math
a
genius.
completely. I wouldn't say it's math. It's like more like process oriented and like
Okay.
like numbers oriented. So to be like a Six Sigma Green Belt certified, you have to do a lot of process improvement projects. And like the people who invented like Six Sigma, they were like the Japanese initially, I think in Toyota and all of that. Then like the father of Six Sigma is Mr. Demings, who worked like with Toyota, for example, to improve their supply lines. And like in the 70s and 80s, when the Japanese car industry
I remember this now.
like bombarded like like the US market, it was like mostly like based on Six Sigma principles. To get my certification was like when I was in college. I worked with and it's just like similar to the Japanese way actually. You start with a champion belt, then a green belt, then a black belt. So I worked under like a mentor. His name is like Howard Gitlow. He's like a big name in Six Sigma and in process improvement. We did like a consulting project together. It was in a hospital, and it was like mostly focused in reducing wait times and like making like the process as lean as possible.
Now I remember
Yeah,
it because I've studied
it's
it. I've
parts.
studied. Now I've remembered. Now I've remembered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was like a lot of collecting like data, like firsthand, like doing charts and so on. But it's more like like from an industry standpoint, I think it's more like prevalent in manufacturing or healthcare. Like actually in the US specifically, a lot of like hospitals, a lot of pharma companies actually, they utilize like Six Sigma methodologies to manage their processes and like like make them better and like improve them like like in the long term.
Yeah, I think the green belt part was what threw me off. Now I remember, I because I've heard it before. I've done a bit of study on it, so I do. I think this is a very specific and very specialized, you know, kind of thing to pursue. And I think the fact that you know, you can improve these processes, make the operation faster or more efficient. I think that's something that requires a lot of detail, a lot of trial and error, and you know, checking everybody's, you know, what are they doing in that chain, you know. So I think it's very awesome.
Yeah. Let me actually tell you a funny thing about that. So my mother is a doctor, and she hates consultants whenever they come to a hospital and like they mandate like do this or do that. So one time I was like, oh, actually, I actually did that at some point. Be like, oh man, I hate your people. So it's like
Coming
from
from
the
your
other
mother,
side of the aisle.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Coming from your mother. So here I wanna get into the ventures, and I just want you to clarify it a bit for me, because as I was checking some of the information, I was a bit maybe a bit confused. So you have a venture called Ticr, and you have a venture called eBursa, but yet they're related, right? So
So let me tell you the story. So right now, as of this week, we're still like eBorsa. eBorsa is the learning the owning entity. We're rebranding as Ticr. So
I see.
when this episode is like like online, it's gonna be known as Ticr. We're right now working on like like releasing our V1 of the app, which is a stock market simulation. We're right now we're in the testing phase. So once that's ready to the mass market, we're gonna like officially rename our app or our project as Ticr. Because actually, this is also like backed by data. So when I first got to the UAE, Ali and I, like the other co-founder, we picked eBorsa when I was in New York. Then I got here, people be like, man, eBorsa is heavy. We want like an app that sounds cool.
I see.
Then we decided
Okay.
on Ticr, yeah, and it's coming from the Ticr device, so it's also like stock market related. So we decided to do that. But like, yeah, apologies about the confusion.
No, I think it's great because I think this again, it touches a lot on how you as an entrepreneur, along with your co-founder, how you make a shift to because your premise, like the premise of your trading platform, is that anyone can
Basically.
trade and anyone can trade in US stocks. So I think it's very interesting that I asked that question because it shows that you are, I want to say, maybe shifting to something so it doesn't sound super technical. Maybe is that what
Super
you,
technical or scary or uncool.
or
That's basically the feedback we got.
Okay,
Yeah.
which is I think this is great because I do have a question later about the challenges that you faced. So I think I'm glad that you mentioned this. And again, going back to the premise of your trading platform, it's the premise is that it's an easy way to trade, and it's an easy way to trade US stocks from the UAE. So firstly, how my first question is, how do you receive that type of permission to trade US stocks here in the UAE? Like from a licensing perspective, from a permit perspective, what does that entail?
So you need a license. You need a license to deal with retail clients. Right now, we're in the licensing process with the DFSA, which is the regulatory arm of the DIFC, the Dubai International Financial Center, and we're still in the process. It's definitely like a lengthy process. It's very, very bureaucratic. You have to submit a lot of paperwork. You have to explain a lot of things in in a business plan, and like how you plan to acquire users, how you plan to hold their money. So it's like it's a lot of pain points, honestly, and I didn't expect it to be this complicated when I started. Then from the US side, you have to do like a lot of like anti-money laundering, AML compliance, and like a lot of due diligence, and you have to make sure the person who's investing with you is actually licensed or compliant with US regulation in terms of investing. So it's
you're doing so you're doing KYC on both sides. Like
we do KYC on both sides. So that's the interesting part. It's like a complex situation a little bit.
Yeah, I just think like for me, why I'm asking you this question, because I thought that that premise, I mean, what makes Ticr so different than, so that's my other question. What's the unique selling point? What's your unique selling point? Is it because it's easy trading? Is it because it's access to US stocks? Because, for example, you could go to any bank, for example, here in the UAE, and they can give you that exposure. I'm not talking about mutual funds. I'm talking about there is a trading desk, and they can give you the stocks, and you can choose and so on. So what's is it just because, and I don't maybe have the names of apps off the top of my head, but I'm sure that there are apps that will exist here. So in a way, yeah, exactly. So you know better than me. I'm sure you've done your competitor analysis, your research. So I think maybe I rephrase my question completely. Why do you want to jump into a red ocean, as they say? Why are you jumping into that?
It's definitely like there's a lot of redlining and there is a lot of challenges. But let me run you briefly why we're entering that space. So there's a lot of players in the market. They mostly like operate from overseas. None of them is compliant in the UAE. For example, eToro, for example, they're based out of Cyprus, trading 212. I believe they're in Bulgaria, and others. Then locally in a bank, there's a lot of friction to invest as a young investor, or like as a someone who maybe like wants to test out how to invest, you only have like $5,000 or even like less. And Ticr, the vision of Ticr is to let anyone invest any amount in the stock market. And we even started this before the boom in retail trading in 2020. I first came across this challenge or dilemma in the investing space in the region. For example, when I was in Egypt, when I turned 18, I wanted to open a bank account. in Egypt, you can't open a bank account without your one of your parents'
Guardian consent,
permission
yeah.
until 21. Yeah, until 21. So any activity I had to do through a bank required my dad to be present with me. When I went to the US, when I was opening a bank account, the banker asked me, "Do you want to open an investing account?" I was like, "Sure," and it was like super easy. They just like took my details, bam, I could invest. There were like commissions back then. That was like before like the era of Robinhood, commission-free investing. But it was like there was like way less friction. Be like invest any amount, you can like invest through your mobile app. That didn't exist, or yeah, it didn't exist back then in Egypt or like most of like like Arab countries. You typically have to go through a bank, which requires like a minimal investment, and typically you pay like a lot per transaction. Ticr comes in to reduce the friction. We enable everyone to invest whatever amount they wish. We're also minimizing costs. We're gonna like operate on a very competitive cost structure. That's mostly like users wouldn't be paying like much at all per trade, and we give them like trading in a very easy to digest way. We're an educational platform as well. Right now, we're developing our learning materials. We're trying to make like people to understand. You mentioned, for example, you struggle with limit orders and stop limits. We have all of that, like like in an easy to follow learning modules. That will be like part of our app. It's like on our website right now, ticr.io. So we're coming in to reduce the friction in the retail investment space in the region. And this is also like looking at the industry trends worldwide. In the US, there's a lot of like reports coming out like out of 2020 because of COVID. A lot of people started putting more money in the stock market.
I was just gonna say, yeah,
in the stock market, because like for two reasons. The stimulus part, a lot of people found like oh, I'm at home, I lost my job, but I'm making some money, and the stock market, stock market is rallying. The other side, people are actually working, but they're spending less. They got like their summer vacations canceled. I have like maybe like two
they have more disposable income.
I can invest. Exactly. So there is a boom in all retail investment apps, whether it's like like the millennial app, which is Robinhood, or like like E-Trade or TD Ameritrade. So yeah, it's definitely like a hot area, and I think there is a big gap to fill in the region, and there are like other platforms who are trying to do the same thing in Dubai actually, or in the UAE. So it's definitely like the competitive landscapes. Like when I first got here, I didn't expect to see like people trying to do the exact same thing. But yeah, we're different. We're like more educational, and like our experience, to me and Ali, like we had like firsthand experience in the industry. So it differentiates us a bit, but like yeah, it's mostly to reduce the friction in the retail investment space in the UAE. Then in the wider region, hopefully our vision is to expand into the GCC and like the rest of countries in the Middle East, North Africa region.
I think you explained this like really well. I think this was like when I was trying to ask you the question, the way I would want it to ask it completely changed. And I just I want to go on to my next question, but I want to ask you, I just want to respond, actually, not ask. I want to respond to two things here, because again, definitely there's a lot of, this is like a cutthroat kind of field to be in,
100%.
because it's all about the fees, maker taker, all that kind of stuff, and commissions and all this, and finances. It's brutal in the way that the market moves. But I want to respond in two ways. Is one positive and one negative, which is, I'll start with the negative first. The negative part is, and this is not to Ticr or any, I'm talking about investing in general. I think the negative side is, how easy it was for you in the States when you got asked, do you want to open an investing account? The downside to that is that you might be being exposed to a risk appetite that you're not really sure what your risk appetite is. People might 100%. Think, oh, I'll take out a loan, or I can buy this with a credit card, all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't say it. This is when I say negative, I'm saying I'm not saying it in a bad way. I'm just saying that it's maybe a drawback, or it's something that is you need to be careful about. I wouldn't say it's a negative 100%. Thing. I just want to make it like very clear, like as a disclaimer to to people who are listening, is that the best thing, one of the best things you could probably do is invest in yourself, okay, but also invest for your future. And one of the ways you could do
Totally.
that is obviously put your money in a safe place where it can grow. I'm not talking about day trading, all that kind of stuff, but
No, yeah.
so I'm saying definitely there's a drawback to opening a risk appetite, because if you feel like you're doing well, you might like, oh, we'll do some more, I may put some more.
We'll do more. Yes.
There's part of that. But here's the positive side. And I think what may be lacking, or where we can, I think part of what your platform is trying to do is, I think it's very important to educate young people very quickly. It's very important to educate young people very quickly that if you invest now, it doesn't matter it doesn't matter how the market's going to move in the future, because the earlier you start, the larger you can grow your house money, as they say. You can grow
compounding and all of that.
You compound your money, or if you dollar cost average your way into the market, and you kind of build a nest egg in the market. It doesn't matter if one day there's a crash. It doesn't matter, because
100%.
you would have invested 10 years ago. It doesn't matter if a crash happened in year 2028 or something, because your money you've already made money. You've already lost in the profits, so to say. So I think I think it's very important that you guys are focusing on educating people, reducing the friction, but also educating young people so they don't fall into this trap of, they trade a bit and then they lost money and now they have to take out a loan, and it becomes this whole spiral of debt and stuff like that. I think we're very lucky here that we don't have these major scenarios, but I think it's very important for people here to kind of learn that process.
Sure.
So this is just me responding to what you said. And I think
and full disclaimer, we don't encourage anyone like to take loans, and we're gonna only accept payments out of like a bank account. No credit card payments accepted. And we're not advocating for high risk investments. We're not adding options. We don't advocate day trading. Personally, as an investor, I believe long-term investing is the key with the compounding. Even if you do like small gains on daily trading basis, and like from daily trading, you can see, like, for example, you could have made money when the Square stock increased from like 60 to 70, but right now it's 200. So don't look in the short term, look at the longer term. And actually answering your question about or your point, addressing your point about risk appetite, we're actually gonna offer a risk questionnaire that helps our clients to know themselves and align their risk profile with their investment goals. So we're fully getting into this business to help people grow their money. We're not other some platforms, for example, they open accounts for users in the region. They give them access to leverage, to a lot of to a lot of risky investments, and people end up losing their money. This is not the case with us. You'll be able to invest in stocks. If you don't know much in trading, you can go through our learning modules, check your risk profile. But from a trading perspective, all the big stocks, for example, tech stocks, they're doing fine. So if you invest in that, if you invested in I would say maybe Facebook a year ago was, I think, maybe 170, was 170 recently. Right now it's over 200. So it's good to see smart investment or passive investing kicking in and
I was gonna say
gaining momentum. And at the same time, versus a mutual fund, mutual fund is risky. But a user, for example, you as Ali, for example, you maybe 2 years ago, you're bullish on electric cars. Be like, I believe electric cars are the future. I really believe in Tesla. You would have maybe bought 10 Tesla stocks, and the stock have been doing a phenomenal job in the last year or two. So it's not necessarily a gamble. You could do a calculated risk, and will help users to invest according to the risk in a very seamless manner, and in a way also that matches their values and their concerns.
I think it's awesome. I think my key takeaway here is to talk about the education aspect of it, because and starting early is because the earlier you are, then you become less emotionally attached to your money. And I think this is the key. You should not
Hmm.
be emotionally attached. And I mean, I learned it the hard way. A lot of people learn it the hard way. So I think the farther away the farther away you are now from the point you invest, the less emotionally you
Hmm.
attached you are to your money. um, I want to get into, so because you've already answered my question about like people with no trading experience, how you help them, but with your co-founder and you as being like co-CEO,
Hmm.
what just kind of briefly tell me, what are the challenges that you guys face, like a top level? What are the challenges you guys face to reach where you are right now?
It's all challenges. Like right, like we first started in New York. We met in New York actually around 2 years ago. Funny enough, we met at an event at the Lebanese American University campus, where like they have a space in Manhattan. It was a music event, and we met there. We ended up like sitting next to each other. Then we decided to tackle the space earlier this year. We came like like firsthand across the struggle from like our friends who are back like like in the region and like their struggles like like to invest. Then we decided we started studying like like the market from like the US side. Then eventually when I got here, I started like meeting with regulators, speaking with them. What do I need to do? How to get over that? From a challenging perspective, you're trying to sell your vision to regulators, to people you want to hire, to investors, whether VCs or angels. So it's a brutal experience. A lot of people glorify entrepreneurship, and like like they make it like sound very rosy, but it's brutal. Like sometimes you have like to stay up at night. Sometimes I have to take like like a call early in the morning with someone in Dubai, then like like a call at night with someone in California, whether it's an investor, like like even like someone we could partner with from a tech standpoint. So this is like the I would say like the challenges are basically regulatory, um, funding. As a startup, you want to stay afloat and like like make sure that you're sustainable in the long term, and make sure like like even when you face hurdles uh, and like you fall down, you have like to come up as fast as possible. And this is the most challenging part
Mhm.
about startups. And then you have to be very passionate about like like the problem you're trying to solve, that you could dedicate a lot of hours to that like problem. And this is something.
Yeah.
For example, I've known a lot of people who in startups or entrepreneurship, before I even like like when I was like discussing this initial like the idea with them, when back in the idea stage, be like, listen, just make sure you're very passionate about it, because at some point you're gonna be like super burnt out, and what's gonna like like get you over that is your passion about like like what you're building. So this is, I think, it's a crucial part. Then from another challenge, we're born out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So our team is fully remote. We actually operate out of 4 continents. So it's very funny, but it's like I'm here in Abu Dhabi. Like our tech team is like in different countries, in Egypt and some parts of Europe. Ali is in Cyprus. We have people in the US and Canada. So it's like sometimes it's like like the virtual part of it is tiring,
Yeah.
but at the
Yeah.
same time, as I was telling you like before like like before recording, it gives you access to more resources outside your outside, like for example
The
outside like the
physical
UAE, for
space.
example,
Yeah. Yeah. Or
physical
yeah.
space, like when yeah, when you're not restricted by the country you're in. And this is something that's great about remote work, but at the same time it's very challenging from a logistics standpoint, from like timing your meetings, from communication, because you're not seeing the person face to face. So it's definitely like like challenging from that side.
Yeah, I'm very very happy that you shared very specifically what the challenges are. I'm glad that you did, because I think you know um, here on the show we try to kind of underline those, let people
Hmm.
understand. If you're going into, if you're working on something, if you're planning to be an entrepreneur, there's a lot of challenges, and you're right. People glorify this aspect of life, and I think it's very important that you don't glorify the burnout as well,
Hmm.
because people they come and they say, oh, yeah, I spent like 18 hours straight working, but I think and there was something that I learned again, and I've mentioned it previously on the show, is I've
Mm,
learned it from the Instagram account founder, and they said like if
mm,
you there's somebody that was saying it. He said if you burn out, there's no business. It's you know your your health is also important. You know you need to
$100%.
you can manage that. But I think the other point that you mentioned, which I really want to underline again for everyone as a key takeaway from that question, is
Mm,
um, the challenge that you face, which is when you see a problem, and especially in your field, which is finance, it's a lot of analytics, a lot of
mm,
numbers involved. If something's not really working, plus there's coding, I'm sure, there's a
mm,
lot of coding as well involved. I think if you find it challenging and you cannot seem to find a problem, or you're not really super invested in your business, you don't have the passion to fix it, it can be very tough. It can be very tough,
it'd
and
be
it
very
will
tough.
lead you to fail and just not continue. And
Hmm.
that's
And
happened to me with some ideas that I may have had, and even with the podcast, very different stages where I was like,
right.
I'm not gonna do the show now, or I can't do this
Hmm.
now, I'm not gonna think about it. And I think it's very much managing your expectations, but also managing
Hmm.
the problem in itself. Especially, you need to have that passion, like you said. I
Hmm.
agree with that.
Hmm. And speaking of failure, I think you should be also like like very accepting of like not succeeding. I hate to say it failure because you learn a
Yeah,
lot along the way. And
yeah, yeah.
something actually, my co-founder Ali reminds me all the time. Bill Gates was turned down by Warren Buffett when he was like fundraising for Microsoft, and he had like to knock like I think uh, he had to knock thousands of like not thousands, like he reached like 1,000 investors, and only like 3 or 4 invested in him, and he made them super rich. But he always reminds me of that. It's like don't be too demotivated. That happened to like like a
Yeah,
guy that was like the richest man on earth for quite some time. So it's and like to the audience in general, I'd say if you have an idea, study it, execute, but like like do your make sure it's like a smart like like venture, or like like you're doing it the smart way, and like look at failures as learning experience. This is what I would personally say.
yeah. I mean, I'm glad you said that. I mean, people who have been watching the show for a while now know that failure is part of the show. Failure is part of it's part of the message that I'm trying to say in every episode, is
Hmm.
that you will learn nothing from success. You will learn nothing from it.
Actually, true.
uh,
Very
you
true.
will learn, yeah, you will learn nothing from success, and failure
Hmm.
is the part is just a stepping stone to success. And I'm really
Hmm.
glad that you mentioned that story about Bill Gates, because again, um, it's not just him. There's a lot of other big names, in the world who
Hmm.
have faced these challenges. And I'm not saying that you might have the same mind as Bill Gates, but failure in one business venture means that you're probably going to succeed in something else. So just
100%.
continue on the path that you've decided to take, and just understand that without the failure in your life, it's just another stepping stone. So I'm glad you mentioned that again, on the same level, wavelength.
Hmm.
um
Absolutely.
so Abdulazim, we kind of reached, I want to say, the closing part. And here
Hmm.
I want to just do some key takeaways on who you are as a person. What are your So if you were not doing this, what do you do in your free time? What is I know you mentioned a couple of things, about um, painting, which is
Hmm.
very interesting to see somebody who might have a right brain, very like strong right brain, but at the same time have a very creative left brain in terms of the painting,
Hmm.
and building your network. And I want to touch on like what are the away from finance, what do you do, what do you do?
Um, Painting is something I enjoy doing. I've been slacking off, I'd say, in the past year. I wouldn't say I'm very like good at in painting, but like like it's something that like makes me like escape or like relax my brain for a little bit. Like like I would start a painting, like focus on it like for like 6 hours, and I'm completely like like um, disconnected from everything else. So this is like what I enjoy the most about painting. Other stuff I enjoy doing, I really like reading. Also something I've been slacking off. I mostly read like, public and public economics, or like public policy stuff, and like something else, and history. This is something like I'm really like, keen on knowing more about. I enjoy exercising. It's something that like, lets me relax a bit, release like some endorphins, and like release my adrenaline and all of that. And it's like, it keeps me, it helps me to stay calm on like, like mentally, and like, it's something also like when you're excited and you have like a lot of adrenaline, it's something like, like that you could use to push yourself. But yeah, that's basically like, like what I do like in my free time. Then I have like, like ongoing and offgoing like hobbies. Like at a time of my life, I wanted to be like, I was like really into architecture, and I was really into like taking pictures of like old buildings or like different architecture styles. This died off a little bit. Then it's like, like I do a lot of stuff that's like, like unrelated, as you said, like, like actually surprisingly, like out of like a lot of people did never like, like expected me like to even like try painting, be like, I didn't see that side from you. And it was like, like a very interesting remark to hear people say. But it's good. It's a good way to cope, and it's a good way to relax. I would say that. And I'm not like, I'm no way like, like Picasso or like Diego Rivera or anything.
No, I understand. It's just it's an outlet, which and an escapism,
an outlet,
which everyone should have, I think. And what's your investment strategy like? What's person, like if you were personally investing, like, well, what do you follow the same philosophy as what we just talked about, or are you different?
I'm saying like I'm a long-term investor. The thing, I never invested in crypto, so this is something I need to learn from you. A lot of friends told me, "Oh, you got to get into crypto," but it's something. The risk and the fluctuation in price is huge. I can't like, like I'm looking at it now and it looks like very promising. And it's actually, I believe in crypto as a way to democratize like, like payment flow, and like, like finance, and like, like serve the underbanked like situation, or like the population, the underbanked population. But the Bitcoin is like, I feel a lot of people, a lot of like not very well informed people put their money in, and they end up like, like just helping like, like the price rally, and eventually like the bubble bursts. And like right now I'm seeing a lot of hedge funds, and like, like a lot of institutional investors are getting into crypto, and they're trying to use like the retail investment momentum to make gains for their investors and clients. So this is something to keep in mind of when investing in crypto. From like investing in stocks, I'm more of a long-term investor. I believe in specific industries. Personally speaking, like I invested in Square early on. I've done like some errors too, like and it's sometimes like, like it's like my economics background hits in. So earlier this year, like I looked at economics data, and I believe the stock market will drop around like June or something. And so I pulled my investment out, but and I returned like, like I actually put my money back in early July, but I actually lost on in the momentum. And this is something I didn't expect. I was like, like the unemployment numbers are coming up, they're going to increase. It's going to be like a very, very high unemployment rate. And I think it hit like 15-20%, and it was like a massive uptick. But the market reacted the other way because of like, like the other like trends, when like, like people are actually getting into retail investment. So this is something I didn't pick up on like this year, for example. But yeah, I look at it from like a long-term perspective. I'm a strong believer in technology, in advertising technology, financial technology, biotech. I'm a big into biotech. There is actually phenomenal like, like progress and advancement in that space, and a lot of smart companies. Oil and gas is down this year, but I would take like a long-term position with Shell.
Yeah, it was just time
The
to buy now,
full
I guess.
disclaimer,
Yeah.
yeah, full disclaimer. Don't use this as investing
But
advice.
of course, nothing we say
It's like
on the
people
show.
people will come to my
Yeah, for
Instagram and be
sure.
like, "Man, I lost a lot of money.
You told me
What
to
now?"
invest here. Yeah, no, exactly. You're right.
Take it with
Disclaimer.
a grain
You
of
know, not
salt.
exactly. Nothing in the show is financial advice. Okay,
Yeah.
so I have two more questions for you,
No, please.
Abdulazim.
Mhm.
Second to last is why did you decide to come on the show with me?
I love the show. First of all, like the messaging is great. I checked your Spotify and like like it's very different. It's like you get like you host people from different backgrounds, and I really like that. You don't have like a one theme. Like you would host like someone. I saw you hosted a teacher, and she was like speaking about like like her experience during COVID-19. Then you would host someone like who built like the first board game in the UAE, and
Yeah,
someone
it's
who's very
just yeah.
artistic. So it's like non-restrictive, and it's like a medium from people from multiple disciplines and different disciplines to express themselves. And I really like the idea. Plus, I listened to a few podcasts. They were like very real. It was like a very genuine conversation, and I really like that.
Well, thank you, Abdulazim. I think this is I'm trying to do that even in every show that I do, and I thank you for also being very sincere, especially when we're talking about finance, trading, and your personal
Mhm.
wealth and stuff like that. So I really thank you for that. And my last question to
Mhm.
you, Abdulazim, is: do you have a question for me?
Yeah, I would actually love to know about, like what made you like come up with like, like your podcast, the challenges so far, and what would you, if I were to start a podcast or a webinar tomorrow, what advice would you give me?
Awesome. That's I think
It's
that's
it's also an entrepreneurship venture. Like it's not an easy thing to do.
of
Like I know
course.
people like who are like doing like, cultural webinars and stuff. It's like hard to organize with people and like get people like like to dial in and all of that. So it's like I would love to know more about your experience and like
Uh,
your challenges and so on.
Yeah, I would love to share that. I mean, I think from a webinar perspective, or when you're
Hmm.
trying to, regardless of whether it's a webinar or a live event, sorry, like a virtual event,
Hmm.
any type of um, gathering of people, you need to have an events mind. You have to have a coordination mind. My
Hmm.
background is the same as you. I've done economics
Hmm.
in university as well, so that's my background.
Hmm.
But my career is different. I work in events, but when it comes
Hmm.
to organizing, um, getting people together in a webinar, you need to really have. I mean, I've never done a webinar. I'm talking about bringing people together into one
Hmm.
place. It's very much you have to coordinate with people who are very good in their specific fields to make
Hmm.
something be set up. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but you should
Hmm.
know who people's strengths are. That's a project manager's job, and then make sure that you can
Right.
coordinate these people together and then put on something that everyone's gonna learn from or they're gonna
Hmm.
be enjoy about. So I think my advice would say is you need to تتحمل, or let's say you have to put up with basically coordinating different types or different types of people and working with different types of people to kind
Hmm.
of make them come to a certain place at a certain time. It's very much giving the information, telling them this is the time, doing some marketing, making sure
Hmm.
everything works technically. I'm talking about from a virtual perspective, right?
Of
um,
course, yeah.
Sending them the link on time, giving them information on time, all that different stuff, and you have a rundown of what's going to be happening. What's the agenda it's going to be like. It's like setting up a meeting, right? It's like a normal
Right.
business meeting, but at the same time you're catering to specific people, and they have a certain level of expectation, and you just have to live with the fact that you don't know what that expectation is, and you need to always
Hmm.
exceed that expectation. I think for us on the podcast, I think some of the challenges that we face is, and I've said it before, is that consistency. It's working as a team. I said before, it's kind of a challenge as well because,
Hmm.
you know, everybody has either a job or they have their other passions, and it's very much juggling. I'm very much an advocate of you can do both, or you can
Hmm.
you can focus as well. But I like to be a bit busy in these different areas. And I think that's a challenge. That's why I resonated a lot with you when you said, if you're passionate about something, you will find the solution. And I think very much a lot of the challenges that I had faced this year due to COVID, we faced like as a team, is the fact that I had to make a decision. It was either I'm not going to do live shows and just
Mm-hmm.
stop every single show and not going to release any content, or I was going to make the decision that, you know what, content is content. If it's on a Zoom call, or if it's virtual, it's better than nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
we had a challenge of launching our new brand, which you are now obviously a part of, and
Yeah.
there was a decision to kind of make that decision that we're going to launch, and these are the
Mm-hmm.
shows that we're going to record, or I'm just going to sit and do nothing and wait until this whole thing blows over. And I think this
Mm-hmm.
is the kind of the main challenge that I faced here in kind of like 2020. I think this is the main challenge that we faced as a team, especially I haven't seen them in a really long time as well.
Mm-hmm.
It really helps to kind of be close to your friends, and we are all here, like we're all in the UAE, so it's not across countries or continents like you. So, and I think, and the last thing to touch on for you is, if you want to start a podcast tomorrow, it's that easy. It's really that easy. And I don't think anyone should think that doing this it's a very, I don't think it's a very difficult thing. Where the difficulty comes from is really investing in yourself, investing in the show, investing in doing your research, and working on yourself. You can easily start. For
Mm-hmm.
some people, that's the challenge. And you mentioned that
Right.
show, episode 22, which was the first Emirati board game. He has the same philosophy. The most important thing is that you have to do is to start. You need to start. Once you start, that's the first stepping stone. And if there's something you want to talk about, you want to be very specific on your show, your podcast, it's as easy as that. You can just get a mic, you can just talk and record it,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just post it on any hosting platform, and it's out there. And I think, again, I really want to stress this fact: the first work you put out is never going to be your best. It's
Of course.
just, if you, there's that another saying, and I also know this from Founder. It's, I think, one of their magazines that they had, is that if you've if you, I think your product is perfect, you've launched too late. It's
100% actually.
yeah, if
Mm-hmm.
it's something is perfect, you've launched too late. And the most important thing is, one of the most important things, I wouldn't say the most, is you need to be relevant, and you need to start. So you need to just begin. So I would say to you, there's really nothing standing in your way of starting a platform for you to share your information or knowledge with other people. um, that's how I would answer that question.
No, great to hear. It's a lot of like insightful points. Yeah. So anyone who wants to start a podcast, start now.
Yeah, just start now. there's
Yeah.
there's not there's nothing holding you back but yourself.
Yeah. And actually, I think it's people think like people like when you're trying to host people in a podcast or a webinar, people will be unresponsive and wouldn't like get back to you. I think from my experience, most people would be very happy to help. So if anyone is starting any venture in general, like if you reach out to someone, be like, listen, I love what you're doing, I would love to have you on a podcast. I think you have a shot.
Yeah, this
Mhm.
is, I don't want to go super deep into it, but this is, I would
Yeah.
say, this is, if there's so many people out there, that's kind of the philosophy of the show. There's so many
Hmm.
people out there, and I was kind of, I want to say, yeah, I was kind of like maybe afraid or worried that if I reach out to
Hmm.
somebody, they might say no, they might not want to be part of the show and stuff like that. You have nothing to lose. You can just tell them,
Hmm.
ask them. If they say no, there's always somebody else. And I think you learn no more from the no than the yes. So I think
Of
you
course.
just you just keep going. And we've built kind of like a platform where a lot of the guests have shared the same feelings. And if you watch any of the shows, you can really feel that just the potential is within you. There's nothing holding you back.
Absolutely. Hmm.
And with
Absolutely.
that, Abdelazim, I just want to say, um, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, talking
A pleasure
personally
of
about
mine. Of mine.
personal, yeah,
Mm,
personal stuff about you, talking about finance, talking about your venture and the challenges you face. It's been an absolute
mhm.
pleasure. Do you have any last words?
No, thank you so much, Ali, for having me on the show. It was like, pleasure is mine. And best of luck, with the show. Like, I love the messaging, and it's great seeing you, passing the 1,000 follower mark on Instagram. So hopefully you'll reach like a million very soon.
Thank you so much, Abdelazim. I
Mm.
really appreciate it. Thank you so much for that, really.
Of
And
course.
I want to again thank you so much for being on the show. And it was an absolute pleasure. I want to sign us off. This has been the Nobody's Famous podcast with the one and the only Abdelazim Eltoukhy. I wish you the best of luck in your venture, and I hope by the time this, in a few months' time, we will see. We're gonna be on your trading platform. We're gonna be supporting you all the way. So thank you so much. This has been the Nobody's Famous podcast. You could find us on Anghami, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, all those good platforms, and you can watch us on YouTube. And we'll be with you all the way.